Hi, I'm Rick Dancer. Welcome to the Water Cooler. Today we're talking about the Lane County proposed budget for 2012. And just to be real upfront, I am contracted through the county to produce videos for them. These questions we've gotten from people on the streets, from Facebook, from county leaders. These are the questions that they hear a lot, and we figured you might want to have some answers to those questions. So joining me now is Leanne Richardson, the county administrator for Lane County. So Leanne, $16 million in cuts. That has to be overwhelming. Where do we start? Give us an overview of this budget, this proposed budget.
It was overwhelming when you first started thinking about it. What we did last year, we actually have to kind of start with last year, because last year we cut $7.8 million a year ago from our general fund usage, and during the course of last year we had reduced another $1 million. So we started last year reducing $8.8 million, knowing that we would have reductions that were larger this year, and it turns out to be about $16 million that we needed to cut this year. And so what we did is we continued the conversations from last year about what are the services that we believe are core, that either the board said are these essential services through their strategic planning sessions and their vision sessions and the goals that they set, or that we hear from the community. And unfortunately, that's about all we provide these days, our core services. So then I looked at the historic percentages of general fund that we give to all of our departments that get general fund. And as a starting point, I said, come back to me with, if you had a proportionate reduction based on how much you've historically received, what reductions would you have to do, factoring in the board's goals and their vision and where they want to be in 5 years. So all the departments that received general funds came back with those proposed reductions. We talked a lot about the impacts. Did they consider other cuts instead of these? And for the most part, I accepted what my department directors gave me. It was such a large cut. There's not a way to really tinker.
Right. You got to really do some major cutting.
Right.
Talk to people about the mergers, because I think you've merged some departments, and a lot of folks probably don't know about that.
We have. One of the first mergers that happened that's complete is the district attorney agreed to take on county counsel, which is the internal legal work that's done for the county. And so that's what I used to do. And so now they don't have a county counsel. They're saving that amount of money. They're also sharing a lot of their internal resources. All of the payroll processing and the administrative costs are being shared now instead of having two different departments do it. So that was a pretty easy, small merger, but it's already shown some long-term cost savings. The much larger merger that we're still working through, we have a Department of Health and Human Services, which is a very large department. We have the Department of Youth Services, which is a medium-sized department, and then the Department of Children and Families, which is a very small department. And many of the proposals that we received through an Innovate project we had last year recommended consolidating those three departments. And I am moving in that direction. We are consolidating. The first step is the Department of Children and Families is merging with Youth Services. And a couple weeks from now, their employees will actually physically move over into the Youth Services building. The next merger, which will happen this summer, is Youth Services will become part of Health and Human Services. And so what that means is, instead of 3 different department directors, we will have 1. Instead of 2 assistant directors, we will have 1. We're sharing all of the administrative costs, so there are savings there. And what we're also realizing is, with Health and Human Services being so closely related now with Youth Services, there's services that we used to pay for with general funds in Youth Services that we're now able to bill for in other ways through Health and Human Services. So for example, part of one of the proposed reductions in Youth Services was to completely close down the Phoenix program. Which is a very successful program, but they have about 16 beds.
Right.
So not a lot of beds. It costs a lot of money for the amount of kids that we get to impact, but we'd make a huge impact on those kids. Well, instead of completely shutting it down, we're able to use some of the Health and Human Services money, and we're saving half of the beds.
Wow.
So that was a wonderful kind of bonus to this whole merging process.
Leanne, go back for people, because I've learned so much after just doing some of these stories for you guys, is go back to how we got here. Take us back pre-Measure 5 and 50. We'll get to that, but let's go back to the days when county commissioners were keeping tax bases low because we had these timber revenues coming in. Talk about that.
We did. Lane County, as many of us who live here know, we're very timber rich. Over 50% of Lane County is made up of federal timber. And so in the past, historically, when there was a lot of logging going on, Lane County received a lot of money in federal timber receipts. And so the Board of Commissioners, many different boards over a period of many years, decided that they would keep the property taxes very low because we didn't need it. We were receiving timber receipts. And that kept the county moving forward for years and years and years. Unfortunately, as we know with measures 5, 47, and 50, that tax level was capped. And so Lane County and a few other timber-rich counties had all made that same decision. They kept the property taxes low. They used timber receipts to fund their core services. All of a sudden, we didn't have timber receipts coming in because of the reduction in where you can cut and when, and we can't increase property taxes.
So what's the cap at for Lane County? And can you, just so people will understand, compare that to Eugene, the cities of Eugene and Springfield, so people know kind of what that's at?
So Lane County receives $1.09 per thousand in taxes that we receive to do all of the core services that we provide. The cities of Eugene and Springfield are roughly at least twice that amount, if not higher.
So that's not much to work with. And then when it was froze, you can't raise that any.
We can't raise that.
What's the hardest part of this proposed budget for you?
That's hard because I've spent the last year trying to get to know my employees and all of these different services they provide. And so I've done probably 15 to 20 different job shadows and gone out there and really saw the work that they did and the impact that they have on the community. And so doing these cuts, everybody that gets general funds is being reduced significantly. And so it's very difficult for me to say just one. We have public safety, which is being decimated. And I understand both from the public safety side how hard that is to know that there's going to be calls that we can't respond to. There's going to be kids who need treatment that we can't be treating. There's going to be very egregious cases that we won't be prosecuting. And so I see it from the public safety side because the people who work in public safety believe in justice and in achieving a justice for our community, and they won't be able to do it. And I also see the community side where you're out there in your house in rural Lane County and somebody's trying to break in, and it may take an hour and a half for a deputy to get there. And that's unacceptable, but there's no other choices.
What about a special levy? I mean, I've heard talk in the community, people saying what we need is a special levy that, you know, other like Health and Human Service, other people have found other dollars to help fund that.
At some point, we need to find a different revenue stream for at least some of the services we provide with general fund dollars. There's not a way that we're going to be able to continue to provide the services if we don't find a way to do that. My concern is, and I've worked off and on for the county since 1994, is that we have said services are going to be reduced year after year after year, and we've found a way to make do. We've found a way so that the public doesn't feel the impact of the cuts. And we've done that with deferred maintenance of buildings, with adding more to what our central services people do. We try to take the cuts internally so that you don't feel it externally. So my concern is that people don't really realize how close we are to the edge at this point, and that until we really do fall off and they really do have to wait an hour and a half for someone to respond, or they see the cycle of people being released from the jail, or we have a communicable disease outbreak and we can't address it, and so it's much more significant than it should have been. Until something like that happens, I don't think the public believes us yet.
Because there's been a lot of experience history that says, you know, all of a sudden at the last minute, the cavalry comes in and there's the money, and there's no cavalry.
There isn't. I mean, even if the Secure Rural Schools money passes, even if the federal government somehow gets that reinstated, that won't resurrect most of the services that we're cutting. And so this really is the year, but I think, and this is just my opinion, the board may feel like they have to go out for a money measure anyway, but it's my feeling that we're not going to be successful until the public goes, oh, okay, they really meant it this time. It really is happening this time, and this isn't acceptable.
Process. Explain for people, because you know we all know it in the industry, but what happens from here out? You propose a budget, it gets released, goes to a budget committee. Kind of explain to folks.
I'm required to propose a balanced budget to the budget committee, and so that's what I've pulled together, and that's what's being released. The budget committee, it will be receiving it. We'll have a series of budget committee meetings. May 1st is the first one. There's a public hearing also at the end of that meeting. I think there's 5 sessions of the budget committee receiving information, hearing from the various departments what the cuts are in my proposed budget, and then there's deliberation. And the budget committee's responsibility is to adopt a balanced budget. So they can take what I've proposed and not make any changes to it. They can come up with something completely different or something somewhere in the middle. And then they adopt a balanced budget, which then goes to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners makes up 5 of the 10 people on the budget committee. But the board is the ones who they actually adopt the budget, and they need to do that by the end of June.
Okay, so at those public hearings, it'd be very helpful to see the public. You know, this is the year, if you want to see what's really happening, to show up and really be involved and listen to what's going on.
It would be. We assume that the public has certain interests, and there's some services that we provide where there's a more coordinated group of people who see the benefit and will advocate loudly for it. But if people have other interests, they can't just assume that there will be people there talking about those interests to the budget committee. That if you really do have an interest and you have a value that you don't know whether it's going to be expressed or not, the better case is to come and talk.
And from talking with you, it really is, it's our county.
Mm-hmm.
And
it is.
we need to be involved in that process.
It is.
All right, Leanne, thank you so much for joining us and talking with us about this.
Thank you.